there's often this perception that the biggest competitors to any health and fitness industry company is fellow health and fitness professionals. But the reality is, we were speaking about this yesterday, is that the people that we're most up against is actually the Netflixes of the world and the McDonald's of the world, or and competing for their attention and time. Because if we think about what we're trying to promote and what they're trying to promote, we're on direct opposite ends of the spectrum. This is something that's often missed, and we were discussing yesterday around the power of environment and the power of dieting, well, not dieting, advertising culture to drive people to potentially unhealthy behaviors. So let's kick it off by talking around the power of environment and the power of the real competitors that we're facing in the world.
Whew.
I guess from what we get from clients, I think it is so true that we are competing with the likes of the Netflix, because you can talk to them about how they've been getting on in the week, and they might tell you, they've been keeping up with the show, and you can have a little chat about that. But within the same email, the same correspondence, they might also say that they haven't had enough time to get enough sleep, get their steps in, or whatever. And so, although there doesn't mean you can't enjoy things like Netflix if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, those things are potentially going to be fighting against each other if you have a limited amount of time, and then it's what you put your time on. And so it is us trying to make sure that people are using the time they have for self-care and make sure they're looking after themselves, whereas the Netflixes are trying to draw that away and take that time up with mindless TV watching or whatever it is. I think it's interesting as well. Netflix actually have came out, quite publicly and just said, when they were asked who their biggest competitor was, they said it was the human requirement to sleep, because ultimately, what's stopping you from watching Netflix, or for most people, is the time that they have to go to bed. And so Netflix are then at war with your need to sleep, and you're then trading off: do I get my 8 hours, or do I watch another episode? Do I then get my 7 hours, or do I watch another episode? And so every time that episode finishes and the new one starts, it's them trying to win that battle just to get another hour of your time in there, which is obviously going to take an hour away from somewhere else, which is most often our sleep.
Yeah, but fair play to Netflix, because there is a setting, and I use this setting, that they will let you know if a couple episodes have passed, if you fall asleep watching it or whatever. There is a setting on the app that will actually stop the show and ask you, are you still watching this show, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes I'll sort of like wake up and go, yeah, no, I'm turning the TV off and going to bed, so that's pretty good. But at the end of the day, they are obviously still robbing your hours and whatnot. But I think it's a good, obviously Netflix is a really good metaphor for the diet industry as well. If not even say the diet industry, it's more just the food culture industry. I'm sure anyone listening to this, they can walk down there, any city in the world, anywhere, well, maybe not now in lockdown, but you walk anywhere and you are literally surrounded just by fast food chains. Or you got McDonald's, you got Hungry Jack, you got Burger King, you got KFC. You got every subgenre taking up the same road with, just everywhere you look, there's food. Everything that we do, there seems to be some association with food as well. You watch Premier League, you watch any sports channel that is of people promoting athletic prowess, they are still advertising fast food chains in between during their actual matches. All their sponsors are like Coca-Cola, whatever it is, right? This is how deep this entire thing goes, right? It's like these companies, they don't care about your health. At the end of the day, it's not your health is not their business. You know what I mean? It's your ill health that is their business. And the more they can promote that, the more they can spend money on creating the perfect food for you, which, it's crazy when you actually look at how much research and money goes into finding the bliss point, which is what, the perfect combination of like crunch, texture, whatever it is, the amount. But I think Doritos, they have spent ludicrous amounts of money perfecting their corn chip. You know what I mean? Just so you can not stop at one, you have to have more and more and more and more. And this is what these companies are fighting for. These companies are fighting for going against your brain to just keep eating. They want you just to keep eating. And so much has gone into that. It's actually it's stupidly scary, and it's actually a miracle that we're not all obese because of this. It's actually insane.
Yeah, and in terms of the research, in terms of trying to get you to get hooked on that stuff as well, even if you look at the actual restaurants that you visit, so in terms of like the McDonald's, the physical places, I was reading something recently where they were saying they add the ball pits and the playgrounds and things. So from a young age, you really associate that as somewhere where you go to have fun. And when you are having fun, you're then also having the burger and chips, whatever it is. And so that link gets made at a really young age. It's almost like every time you go to the swings in the park, you just have a milkshake. Suddenly you want to keep going back there, and the milkshake gets more and more linked in. As you grow older, you're not going to the ball pit anymore, but you're still going there for that good time or that weekend treat or whatever it is. So it's really, that psychological link the seed gets planted from a young age that just, I guess, grows as we get older.
And they get you when your brain's developing, and when you're developing all those childhood memories, that's when they get you, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look at the social media,
movies with popcorn.
Yeah, movies and popcorn. If you look at social media companies now, you might have seen the Social Dilemma. Is it Social Dilemma it's called?
Yeah.
But if you look at how much all they do is they think, how can they get you addicted to this? How can they get you addicted to the social media? So it's the same thing in the food industry. They're doing the same thing with colors, with setup, with the way they position themselves, and it's all fueling behavior that's not really adding any value to the world. It's just getting people addicted to food. And that's a big thing in itself, is food addiction. And people are struggling later on in life to deal with it, when you can't say that these are all the causes of it, but it's probably a big contributing factor.
Massively. Yeah, because you think about it, like there's so many associations that you don't realize that come with food. Like everywhere you go, every social event is celebrated. You get married, food. You die, food. You go anywhere, like there's always food on the plate. I remember even from a young age, every time my parents had people over, they would always set up food. I was like, where has this food you've never eaten this food in front of me. And then all of a sudden they got biscuits, they got nuts, they got this thing. I was like, man, what is all this? But like, just because some people have come over just to have a chat and a coffee, and people will just lay out food, and you just eat and eat and eat and eat mindlessly, and this happens from just early on. They don't know any better. And yeah, you don't realize these associations until you actually start paying attention to what you're eating, until you actually start trying to transform your body, and it's hard to break free from that, because it's very, very conditioned, and that's what the food industry wants as well.
And in terms of those relationships, I think one of the biggest ones that I think clients often notice once they start working with us and start their journey is the link that they then have with their parents, their loved ones. Because for so many people, their mother's love and comfort is so strongly linked in with food. And obviously being like the caregiver when you're younger, your mum or your parents or whoever is looking after you is providing you with food. But as you grow up, it gets so linked in that when you see your mum or your parent or loved one, you have this certain food, and that the relationship is expressed through a giving and receiving of food, rather than actually enjoying each other's company or really focusing on each other's company, which I think really is like a light bulb moment for a lot of clients when they start, and then they start kind of unraveling the relationship a little bit more and seeing that it's not just about sitting around and stuffing your face, because everyone's looking down at a plate and not speaking anyway. Suddenly, you remove the food focus from it, you can see what the relationship actually is and start to nurture that a bit more as well.
It's funny when you have accountability to non-negotiables around your physical, all these things get exposed, and you start realizing things about your environment and your social life that you were so conditioned to not even think about before. We were discussing yesterday on a chat around environment dictating your success and your ability to transform and your ability to live a healthy and fit lifestyle. Because if your environment is conducive to bad food behaviors, sedentary lifestyle, and anything that's going to be unproductive towards your health and fitness, you're more likely to do so as well.
Yeah. And this is where it's so important to surround yourself with like-minded people, you know, or, you know, put yourself in a bit of a realm that you are with like-minded people. Because it is super important, right? Because just think of it, if you're the only one in your peer group that is actually trying to change their body, change their approach to life, you know, and you go out with the boys or you go out with the girls or whatever it is, and they all want to have a drink, and then you're there going, oh, I don't want to drink, I just want to be around you, I just want to be around you people because I like you people, you know, I don't need to drink. And then all of a sudden you're just like, well, why don't you want to drink? Are you better than us or something? Or, you know, they'll try to bring you down to their level, which is really interesting. And, you know, I went through a similar experience back in my day when I stopped drinking as well. And, you know, my true friends came out, and the ones who weren't really my friends, they disappeared. And that was completely fine, you know? So I think that's another good reality check, is to see, you know, who hangs by you when you do let go of those behaviors that are actually destructive, you know, and who goes. And I think that is not only is that just, that's only going to benefit you more than anyone, you know what I mean? So yeah, just something to think about.
The true friends point is massive, I think, because it doesn't mean that you need to get rid of all of your old friends, but it's very possible that if you only see your friends once a week and you're going out on a big night out, 90% of the time you spend with them, you're actually probably drunk. You know, you've had most of the time you're all spending together, you're just drinking heavily. If you remove that drink, you suddenly realize, do we have that much in common? Do we have this really good relationship? And with some people you will, and they'll be brilliant, and you can still have fun and do other stuff. But it's very likely you might notice with other people, it's great when you can't hear each other speak on the middle of a dance floor in a nightclub or something, you're having a great time. But when you remove all of that stuff and, you know, you're going for a walk, it's having a chat with them, is there actually that foundation? And so it can be really enlightening, I think.
Shedding the skin of your environment is one of the most important things you need to do on this transformation, or for anyone really that's trying to live a high performance lifestyle. Is you have to shed the skin of your environment and your social environment as well. But that can be really hard and difficult. But it's often the biggest thing that's holding you back from achieving your true potential, or achieving the level of performance that you're after, because you've always got people, someone, something that's and adding a level of toxicity into your life that you don't realize until you step away and you apply a level of accountability around a certain non-negotiable, which might be as simple as, I'm not drinking alcohol. And as soon as you do that, you expose a lot of things. So shedding the skin of your social environment can be one of the most powerful things you do to unlock another level of performance. Because if we say environment dictates performance, having the right people around you is what's going to allow you to thrive and go to that next level. If you surround yourself with people that are just toxic, or you have nothing in common with, aren't really looking to achieve anything, it's more likely than not then you're going to end up in the same rabbit hole. You know, there's clear research as well in like the in alcohol and obesity, in that, you know, if you know someone who has obesity or is an alcoholic, you're more likely to become one. And even if it's like you're 2 separations away, even 3 separations away, the likelihood is so much higher, just because of that powerful impact that negative behaviors can have on your lifestyle. Whereas the opposite is often harder to break through. It's harder. It can still be done. Like we always hear of domino effects, but it's often harder to break through positive behaviors into other people than it is to just have negativity kind of crush you down.
And there's the saying that, you know, you're the average of the 5 people you're closest surrounded by. And I think it's really true. And the standards that are set by the people around you will have an impact on you. If everyone you know eats takeaway 5 nights a week, if you eat it 3 nights a week, you're probably the healthy eater of the group. You then move to a group of friends who never eat takeaways, you're suddenly the unhealthy one. It all comes within standards. And I think even if you're not physically with each other, I think just being part of the R&T team, we are all, you know, in close communication, and we're aware of each other's standards, which I think then just has that knock-on effect and raises everyone else's. You know, if I can't be bothered to go up the steps or anything, I could think, oh, I know Sanj isn't going to be missing her steps. She's got 2 kids. She's got a lot more on, you know, going on than me. Like that's where the standard's at, you know. And so I think having that standard set for you just elevates you to that another level.
Funny thing is, yesterday, you know, we had a long meeting yesterday, and we had a half an hour gap. So I was reading that gap, and I had the camera on, and I was like, he must have said something like, "Oh, when I was on my walk,"
Yeah.
And in my head, I was thinking, oh, maybe I should have gone on a walk. So this morning, before this podcast, I was like, I'm going to go for a walk before this. But that just goes to show, right? Because it could have been, oh yeah, I went for a takeaway. Oh, my break. Oh, I had a lunch break. I just went down to Pret and got myself a sandwich. That's the other side of things, right? That's what you hear when you're in the office, and then that normalizes that behavior. Whereas if you normalize going for a walk on your break, then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, should I go for a walk or? I mean, I didn't have a sandwich. I did reading instead. So
and if you got a friend who wants to also go for a walk, even better.
Yeah.
You know. So. Yeah.
That's really interesting because the friend thing with the walking is I had someone say to me the other day on a check-in, and they said, oh yeah, I was doing well on my steps, and then I had to drag a mate out for a walk on Saturday, but I couldn't really get him to walk more than like 30 minutes. So we ended up just sitting around for the rest of the time. And he's like, I really wanted to walk more, but we just couldn't do it. And I was like, that's interesting. Like that's a clear example of.
Yeah. That is very interesting. Yeah. So it does go both ways. It can do.
Well, if you think about getting into shape is something that's very easy to spread as a behavior. It's very easy to spread. Yeah. Let's get into shape. Let's get in a diet. Let's go and do this together. We'll be your buddies. But staying in shape isn't something people want to discuss and together and be able to do together, because that requires actual permanent change. You have to permanently change your behaviors, your relationships, your environment. You can't do that for 12 weeks and say, oh, we'll go back to living after that, can you?
I guess a lifelong change can seem like a big commitment. It can seem intimidating. It's something, for the rest of your time on Earth, you have to do something differently. But I think that's why so many of these short-term fad diets are so popular amongst everyone. They're appealing because they don't require that long-term change in behavior, but in turn, as we know, they don't bring about the long-term change in lifestyle and health either.
Segues very nicely into the next topic we want to discuss, which was fad diets. We've got January around the corner. This will be coming out sort of early to mid-December. People are starting to think about what diet should they follow from January the 1st. And a quick look on any Amazon bestseller list will show you the plethora of options that you have at your disposal. Anything from the hypnosis diet to the blood type diet to the hormonal profile diet. There's so many out there. Which one do you want to start with? Because we can kind of dissect as many as we can in this podcast, just to give people an informed opinion about whether they should actually strive for a healthy, sustainable approach, or whether they want to tackle the latest thing that's trending.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah,
I think you answered that yourself, didn't you?
I should definitely go the fad diet route. Easy, quick fix. You'll get very fast results. People will be very impressed with your quick fat loss. Definitely go for it.
You'll be an inspiration to everyone.
It's a great one.
Which one?
The grapefruit diet.
Pretty
sure it was like the diet in the 90s or whatever it was. You literally have a grapefruit for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, and like small little additions to that. Because remember how there was that thing. I don't know if you guys also picked up on this a while ago. There was this thing that grapefruit had this fat burning ingredient, right? Do you guys remember this? You know how that was like promoted for breakfast?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar to you? I can't remember the exact.
It rings a bell. I know some people use it for because it's supposed to help with digestion as well or something, but I can't remember the exact mechanisms of it.
It's got fiber. But yeah, there was a whole diet of literally around that. And you look at it, and it must be a real good fat burning diet. Yeah, you're eating like 700 calories. You're gonna be burning fat, but you're also gonna be burning a lot of muscle and a lot of other things. So yeah.
I think the need for all these fad diets is the perceived need to find something that's just fits specifically for you, that you're such a snowflake that you need this special thing because anything else just isn't going to work. Whereas I think, as we touched on in when we were talking about kind of energy balance in the last episode as well, it's the awareness of what you are eating and how much you're moving, and then how close in line with your perception is with reality is going to determine your success with weight loss. And you don't need this 1% or whatever. But obviously that's the quick fix kind of mentality of, oh, this must be what I'm missing out on.
Yeah. It's also just the allure of something new, but also just that promise of something amazing, because these are always like, you got to give it to them. They market it in the most amazing way. And you must be thinking like, you're off your rocker if you're not doing this. Like if you're not fasting for 40 hours on water only, you're missing a trick here. Or if you're not eating according to your blood type, something's going to go wrong. Or if you're not timing your meals with your hormonal spikes in the day, something's going to go badly wrong for you. Like the allure is just insane. Like sometimes I read it and I'm thinking, am I doing the right thing here? Like, should I be changing my diet?
But and also though, you look at any fad diet though, what do they have in common? A lot of them will always eliminate processed foods. A lot of them actually can be made up of very healthy, nutritious foods. Like you look at the blood type diet, for example. There was no food listed under any blood type where chocolate, you would thrive on chocolate or cake or cookies. You know what I mean? Like all of them had like little differences in whatever. But you look at the actual food choices and they were all highly nutritious, nutrient dense, satiating foods. So let's just say someone was like, oh yeah, cool, I'm going to eat for my blood type because I think that's what's going to help. You will get results, but not because you're eating according to your blood type. It's because you're now in a calorie deficit, eating pretty nutritious food. You know what I mean? Like even if it's if it's compared to what you were eating, it's going to be better. You know, and then you're going to be like, oh my God, I should have been eating for my blood type this whole time. What an amazing diet. No, you just eliminated a lot of crap from your diet and now you're just having better food choices and you're probably in a deficit because you're nice and full and satiated. Yeah.
I think on that note,
go on, Ed.
On that note, there is research to show that the people who are successful with maintaining weight loss over time all have some form of restrictive element to their diet. And so the way you actually do that can be different. It doesn't have to be the same way. So whether it is you only eat certain food sources, you don't eat after a certain time, whatever these diets are, the ones that some people do see results on, it's not that they're magic, it's just they're implementing some form of restriction and awareness to your food. So then you aren't just going all out on pizza every night. If you're not allowed to eat outside of a certain window, it's just going to restrict the amount of time you have to eat. So it may well restrict the amount of calories going in. If you don't eat a food source, you're just limiting your food options, which may again then lead to just a limited calorie intake. And so it's really just looking within these diets, not just at the specific what, but just how it's actually implementing a calorie deficit or controlled calorie intake.
Do you think there's something about changing your association with the word diet itself long term? Because those restrictions you mentioned, like for example, we probably have these subconscious restrictions we've built in, but we're not saying we're on the X diet, are we? We just living life.
They don't feel like restrictions.
Yeah. So it's the first step to like actually one of the biggest problems with these diets is actually the fact that it creates an association with the word diet, which while we know it's not an actually unhealthy word to use, there's so many connotations around it that people feel like if they're following the keto diet, even if it's the most amazing thing for them, because it's a diet, it can only be used for X amount of time.
Yeah, because I think I don't know the exact definition in the dictionary, but a diet is just the food that you consume. Whereas I think the connotation is really linked to fat loss and I'm dieting. Whereas we all have a diet the whole year round because we're just consuming food, but it's then linked to I'm on a diet, or which is normally what's linked to these either going on these fad things or in the lead up to a holiday or something like that. Whereas in reality, it's just your diet is just what you're eating, which is something that you're going to do throughout your whole life. So
I've typed in, what does diet mean? I
think it should translate from like way of living or something. I think it comes from like a Latin or Old Greek word.
Well, it says here in the Cambridge Dictionary, it's the food and drink usually eaten or drunk by a person or group.
So yeah.
But then at the same time, they've also defined it as a secondary, as an eating plan, which someone eats less food or only particular types of food because they want to become thinner or for medical reasons. That's added as a second definition. So that's potentially where these issues have come.
I think even though the first definition is interesting, because they said, was it the food or drink consumed by a particular group of people?
Something by like a person or a group. And then it says diet varies between countries in the world.
Because I think if you look at some of these diets, it becomes a bit of a group scenario where you're setting a team. And so this is where it can really polarize people, because I think you then suddenly, instead of having everyone on a, eating consciously or with just health, eating mindfully, in line with their goals or health, it then suddenly becomes teams of, you've got the vegans here, you've got the carnivores here, the blood types here. And instead of just all being like, we found what works for us, or we're all eating mindfully, or, we've all got separate goals or whatever it is, it then becomes, you guys are idiots. We've got the magic. This is the magic diet. You guys are complete morons for thinking that. And it becomes really polarizing. It's almost like, football supporters, Man City, Man United hate each other. The carnivores and the vegans hate each other. And it becomes this really polarizing thing, which then brings loads of emotion into it. And I mean, like, for me personally, if you told me your breakfast and it was different to mine, I wouldn't care at all, like, who cares? But for these people, it will really piss them off. And, you don't have to look far on social media or any of these things to see people having these huge debates over, what someone else is eating. And that's when you bring the emotion into it. And then I think these diets spiral into almost like cults.
Yeah, and then it becomes another environment dictates performance and success. Because you surround yourself by those people.
Yeah, and when emotion's that high, critical thinking goes out the window. Yeah. And you're purely, you're doing whatever you can just to support that team at that point.
Yeah, and also though, it's again, people like to be part of a group. They like to be part of something. And if you've got a bunch of friends doing the carnivore diet or the keto diet, whatever it is, you start to believe that, this is something special. This has changed my life. If you got epilepsy, the keto diet will definitely change your life. You'll be feeling fantastic. But you got, once you're in that group and you're in that group think environment, then you reach out on your social media groups, because remember, if you're now a keto person, you're going to now be following keto people, then joining keto groups, keto recipes. So your whole social media, your Instagram feed, because your phone's listening to you, by the way, will now cater ketogenic everything to you. So the whole world now for you is keto. And anyone outside of that is like, oh, you're an idiot if you're not doing keto. It's really fascinating.
No, it is. I've been reading about that a lot recently, because it is crazy, because you then start seeking out things that confirm your beliefs and biases already. And then anything that doesn't match that, you avoid because you think it's stupid. And so whether it's legitimate or not, you keep confirming what you're thinking. And although even if it's not based on true evidence, your belief in it just keeps rising and rising and rising, until when you actually get to the top of that, you look down and think there was that bit of evidence or foundation at the bottom, and the rest has just been spiraled with momentum of just, being more sucked into that hype, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like the person who thinks they've gotten 20 kilos overweight because they've had too many because they think the reason they're not losing any weight now is because they're having too many processed foods or a rice cake. That's the example that we're probably referring to. But they've built up this thing as that they can't have processed foods, but they probably don't realize they got up to there because they've just obsessed with processed foods.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's likely, that those people are on their Instagram. They may be following some fitness girls or whatever who are juicing or just having all these kind of, I don't know, like vegan or plant-based foods, and then they think that's the reason, that they've lost the weight and got in this good shape. Whereas in fact, through eating like that, they've also just been in a calorie deficit, which has allowed those people to get into that shape or whatever it is. And so, it's just clinging on to something rather than necessarily the big picture. I think it's like we were talking about the other week about looking at the world for a straw, whereas if you take the straw away, suddenly you can see the big picture a bit more.
If you look at the American dictionary, it says the food and drink usually taken by a person or group. Then a sub thing says a healthy diet includes fresh vegetables. And then the next point says, a diet is also the particular food and drink you are limited to when you cannot eat or drink whatever you want to.
Oof. There's the connotation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
For example, a low salt diet. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Low salt diet. Low salt diet. There's a big perception around salt, isn't it? Just while we're on that topic, you should probably just give that a little myth bust as to why salt is actually really good for you.
Yeah, I think that's almost like, I guess if you look through time, different things have been demonized. There's been salt, there's been fat, then it becomes carbs.
You rotate.
But yeah, salt I think got the raw end of the deal probably like a little while ago. I think there's research to show that was kind of incorrect, but I guess once a rumor gets out there or whatever, it's hard to break. But no, salt's vital for a lot of bodily functions, especially if you're training. Muscle contractions require salt, and so as long as you're healthy, you haven't got any health issues, then adding salt to your meals is going to be beneficial for health as well as performance, and it isn't something we need to be afraid of. I think what can maybe has muddied the water a bit as well is because a lot of foods that you think of initially when you think of high salt foods are also high calorie foods and high in fat. So if you think like, first thing I think of like really salty foods is probably chips, and so that they you do cover them in salt, whatever, but they've been deep fried, probably in low quality oils. They're going to be very high calorie, which is going to have more of detrimental effect than the salt itself. But it's then that link starts to come, I think.
Yeah. So again, by definition, you get someone to go on a low salt diet. What's their diet going to be made of? Fresh fruit and vegetables, lean meat, very little processed foods, because processed foods are full of like salt, right? So again, this is where people would get that, oh, okay, cool. And you get that temporary water drop when you do all of a sudden cut sodium, oh my God, I've dropped like 2-3 kilos by just going low salt, yeah, but your body adjusts to your salt intake. And then as soon as you have a little bit of salt, you balloon up again, so, but yeah, so think of it from someone who doesn't know those things. They start employing a low salt diet. They increase their fruit and vegetables. They increase their potassium. By default, they eat healthier foods by default, putting them in a deficit, therefore dropping fat for X amount of time, right? So, and that's the thing. You look at any of these fad diets, whatever it is, whatever thing, and you put diet at the end of it, they all lead to the same result. They all lead to creating a calorie deficit, whether you know it or not. So.
That's why the most important thing is actually creating a lifestyle solution, creating the right environment, creating the right platform to actually succeed on. Because the diet itself is the easy part to follow. You've got to create now the life to live with in the future, and that's the hard bit. Because when the low salt diet gets tough, and you're 12 months later. Are you going to be around people that are also on the low salt diet, or they're going to tempt you with an extra bit of salt? Like how sustainable is something you do? Funny thing about salt,
I'm going to be fainting.
I discovered the power of salt when I first competed, and I when you're super lean and you play with, you can add a bit more salt and you get really vascular. So I started playing around with salt more, and I thought, I need to add a lot of salt on all my foods. So I went through a period of adding literally like a third of a teaspoon on every meal. And I just thought, this is going to make me more and more vascular. And it tasted amazing. And then I got to the point where I was just so dehydrated after my meals. And I was just pissing yellow. After that I realized I need to really up my water intake in order to do so. But it was such an effort to drink that much water to match the level of salt, because you can regulate it, right? You just need to match the water intake accordingly, and it just got too much effort. And it wasn't actually until about maybe a year ago, that I started calming down a bit, and more recently actually just kind of pulled back on the salt, because I was just obsessed with taking salt. I think it was a taste thing as well. Like I did enjoy the taste of it. But what would happen is if you didn't drink water after, there was one time I had eggs on toast and salt on top, and I went for a walk straight after with a mate, and it was about a 3-hour walk. And as I was going on, I didn't take any water with me because I was like, I don't want to pee on the walk. But what was going on? Because I was so dehydrated, my hands just started getting really like swollen, and like they were getting like you know when you swelling like because you're so dehydrated, and just water retention is getting really high. And that's when I was like, I need to review the salt intake, and because I needed to pee. It was the weirdest thing. I needed to pee at the same time. So I needed to pee, but I was dehydrated. I was parched, and my hands were swelling up. And yeah, that was the last straw for me.
That's funny.
Yeah. And that just goes to show, even when you have the knowledge, you rationalize things based on all the associations. Yeah. My association was that this leads to good pumps and good strength, so I should continue.
Yeah, and then because your taste buds would have got accustomed to it, right? Yeah. Then you keep just adding a little bit more and more and more. Another secret of the food industry.
That's crazy.
Salt, sugar.
Yeah. Because when you don't have salt, it's like, this doesn't taste nice at all.
But if you had that meal before you had started increasing salt, it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah.
It's once you've gone there and then coming back, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and even like you find certain tricks with so if you're making like a chocolate protein shake, you put a little bit of salt in that chocolate protein shake, and it just brings out the sweetness of the chocolate, and it just like amplifies it immensely. And you'll be like, what the hell? How does this taste so good? And then you look at things like your cookies, cakes, all those highly processed foods. There is a heap of salt in there. It's that salt, sugar, fat combination that gets you. And that's what we love. That's what our brains love, right? Because, think about if we go back to the whole food thing, back in evolutionary, or back when we were like, walking the savannas, our brains developed to detect salt, sugar, and fat, and then to scoff that down because that's high calories. It's like, wow, that's amazing. We found this. Let's take it down because we don't know when we're going to have food again. So again, it's ingrained for us to like overdo those things, and now in this environment where you can literally have fat, sugar, salt in like 4,000 or 5,000 calories and not even feel full, which is nuts when you think about it.
Nuts are a good example, actually.
Yeah.
Salt
and nuts.
Yeah.
Salt and nuts.
Yeah. Healthy snack.
Salted caramelized nuts, right? That's the deadly combination.
Yeah.
Sugar, fat, and salt.
Yeah.
What's the craziest diet you guys have followed? Like from a fad diet perspective?
No, I've done carnivore.
And how was that?
So I did it I always like to experiment just because it's fun. So I did this like a couple of years ago now. I've always liked eating meat. So it wasn't really like a big transition for me. So, and yeah, obviously I actually felt pretty good like the first month or so or whatever it is. But just because something feels good at the time doesn't mean it's going to be the healthiest thing over the long term. And again, like maybe I just needed to give my gastrointestinal system a bit of a break from all the fiber I was having. Like I have a lot of fiber even today. Like I'll have like 70, 80 grams of fiber a day, like a lot, Wow. So just going like removing all, So removing all plant products and removing everything else except like pretty much just like meat and animal products. Obviously you're going to go from like a lot of fiber to very, very minimal fiber. So there's going to be that temporary feeling of, oh my God, I just feel so good. No gas, no nothing. It's amazing. It's pretty much a ketogenic diet, right? Well, a higher protein ketogenic diet. So this was just fats and protein. So yeah, I definitely felt, and I found it easy to follow because there's only so much meat you can eat in one hit. You know what I mean? And again, you feel full. You get full very quick. You're satiated. There's no like. This is another interesting point. There is very minimal taste changing things. Like if you're only eating meat, you're only really eating savory. You know what I mean? You can only eat so much savory before you're like, oh, I'm sick of this. And this is what restaurants do. This is why there's always room for dessert. You could have like the biggest savory meal ever, but there's always room for something sweet. So we have that, and then you can also eat after that. You're like, oh my God, I've got room again, and then you keep eating more. So yeah, with the carnivore approach, it's literally just like pretty much one taste. It's like savory or salty, and you get sick of that taste relatively quickly, and you just go, oh, I'm done. So it's very easy to implement, very easy meal prep. Not that hungry, appetite's pretty regulated. Training wasn't the best as you would probably tell. But for like staying lean and not feeling too hungry all the time, I thought it was great. I slept horribly on it though, really, really bad sleep on that. So just felt like my adrenaline was always pumping. You know, I was like, well, ready to go like all the time.
Just wired.
Yeah, just really, really wired. But yeah, I didn't stick for it for long. I just wanted to experience it, you know, just to see what it was like.
Literally just eating ribeye steaks, or would you go chicken? Would you have? You wouldn't have chicken breast,
like,
would you?
Yeah, I had some. I have like a combination. I'll have like, you know, like seafood. Yeah, I'll mix it up as much as I could, right?
Okay.
But yeah, my go-tos would be like ribeye steaks and yeah.
Did you dabble in any? Did you dabble in any organs or anything like that?
Yeah. I actually still eat liver to this day.
Oh, do you? That's something that's one of the very. I like most things, but like that stuff I just can't take.
Yeah, I'll chop it up into something else, you know. So I'll cook it, chop it up, and then put it into like some mince or something. So you don't really taste it that much.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout, actually.
It's very nutrient dense. So
yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting.
We tracking
wouldn't recommend it to a lot of people.
Were you tracking calories?
Yeah. I've always tracked calories. Tracked calories. Yes. But yeah, they can definitely rack up super easy if you're eating super fatty meats. Like it's not like, oh, you can be in a deficit super easy. It's nah. If you're eating like ribeyes all the time, like your fats can get up easy to like 150, 200 grams, like easy. You know, more for sure. You know.
Yeah, I've always been a sucker for fats. There was a period at one point I was going through about I think the small almond butter jars they used to have.
Mm-hmm.
I used to buy one cashew, almond, and peanut a week. I was getting through one a week of each.
Yeah.
Like I just thought fats were the way to go. Like I think I was proper into the paleo stuff. Like it was all paleo, and I thought, just load up on the fats, right? And they're just so boorish, right?
I was on that as well. I used to get the kilo tubs of cashew butter.
Oh, they're so nice.
Full fat Greek yogurt, eggs, cheese, loads of nuts.
Butter.
Oh, it's delicious.
Yeah.
Coconut oil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, coconut oil. Dropping that in everything. Coffee. Yep. The worst thing about like if you put coconut oil into coffee, I was like, well, is it called like? Oh no, butter is called bulletproof. Like, so I was doing that for a while. I guess on that fad we could say. But the oil keeps it so hot for so long. You find like it creates a layer on top. I'd like leave the coffee there for like 10 minutes. I'd go to like sip it on the way out, like going into work or something. It just burn your throat down you because it just like take about 40 minutes to cool down. It's got like a lump of oil in there.
Well, the craziest thing. So when I went to LA, the main bulletproof coffee like cafe is there. They have they have a bulletproof coffee research lab, and then they have next door they have the cafe, and it's not too far from Gold's actually. And you go in there, and it's so well marketed in that you've got like high octane coffee, high this, like it's. And you go there, and you think, I want something. So I tried it, right? And it was nothing more than just coffee with a bit of oil in it. But you speak to the people around there. And I spoke to a couple of guys there, and they were like, when I take this bulletproof coffee, I feel like I'm on cocaine. There's that perception that hey Ken, you're amped up, right? But the reality is just a strong coffee with a bit of oil in it. But it's been
and again, if you're fasting in the morning, right, you're gonna get that little cortisol adrenaline hit. And that's what people perceive to be. That's why a lot of people love intermittent fasting, because of that cognition boost. You do feel, and the reason you feel that alert is because, again, we were primed to switch on if we haven't had food for a while. You know what I mean? Because back then, that means, okay, you need to get going and you need to start focusing so you can find some food. And that's where you get that adrenaline hit, that growth hormone hit. That's, again, being overblown to the max, right? People are now fasting because they think the growth hormone spike is going to be miraculous. You know what I mean? And it's just like, no, it's just what happens when you don't eat for a while. But yeah, and again, like I think for a lot of people will say the same thing, but to say that there is like magic to it, no, you just and do you still intermittent fast, AV?
Yeah, I don't eat till about 11:30, 12.
Yeah, and you do a lot of like focus work first thing.
Yeah. For me, it's purely productivity, and also I just don't want to worry about eating. So for me, it's like I'll wait till about anywhere between 11:30 and 12:30, and then kind of eat then.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it because it's magic. I'm doing it for. Exactly. But I think it also helps me stay lean just by default. It's one less meal.
Yep.
Yeah, but it allows you to have bigger meals later in the day if that's what you like. Then
I like having more meals in the evening, bigger meals in the evening, and this just allows me to do that. And I don't feel hungry at all because what I also realize is your body adapts to these sorts of things really quickly. Like there'll be like 5 to 10 days where you feel hungry in the morning, and then all of a sudden it's very normal not to eat till 11, 12. Like you're like, what's the equivalent to circadian rhythm for hunger? Is there a word for it, or
it's the same thing?
The same thing, right?
Like ghrelin. Yeah, it's ghrelin will start kicking up at times where you usually eat. You know, so this is where having good as long as your eating routine is similar day to day, that seems to be the main thing. You know, and then there is like some research now coming around like chrononutrition and placing most of the calories near the start of the day. But again, it's what works for you. That's always going to be the best. You know,
I think when I discovered this, I was like, oh wow, this is so good, but not from any dietary perspective, just from a performance perspective. I couldn't believe how much extra work I was getting done. I think it was just the fact that I didn't have to break. That was what it was. I didn't have to break twice because I used to eat, my old timings was 7, 10, 1, 4, 7. That's what I used to do. And if you meant like now I just do 12, 4, 7. Like that's an extra hour and then less prep as well. So it's probably about an hour and a half extra.
Yeah, 2 less insulin spikes. That's why. That's the secret. 2 less insulin spikes, more fat loss.
But this is where people will look at some results, whether it's research or say your like anecdotal stuff, and they'll cling on to an idea of it, and then they'll just run with that. So like, oh, Akash doesn't eat till 11 or 12. That must be what I need to do. Whereas in reality, you've gained an hour and a half a day of extra time to do work. That's why it's working for you.
Yeah.
And it's just making sure, like, because so many of these studies that lead to these fad diets, they look at a research paper or something, they see this one like line or something, they're like, oh, okay, we're going to build a diet around that. And they just take out the rest of the picture there completely. Which I think is why we were even talking yesterday in the meeting about principles being so important rather than set plans or set diets. Because once you understand the principles in terms of like energy balance, finding what works for you and your lifestyle, then you can go with any diet and make it or find what works for you. And you don't have to be constricted to these set models. You can find what works for you and you can adapt that as things change. Because I mean, for me, I delay my first meal if I'm in a fat loss phase. As my food's increased, I've brought that first meal earlier in the day just because I was finding it too hard to get everything in. And so once you understand those principles, you can adapt it to suit your lifestyle and your needs. Whereas if you're stuck on these set diets or these set kind of teams that we're talking about, you're then that's it. There's no wriggle room or adaptation to actually suit you.
Yeah, I remember I used to also read with when I was, when intermittent fasting was like a big thing, there was like back and forth pages and pages of discussion on, what classifies as you breaking the fast and not breaking the fast. So you get people freak out and go like, oh, well, can I have like 50 calories worth of milk in my coffee or 40 calories? Because 40 calories doesn't break the fast or whatever it is.
Some people were saying coffee counted. Some people say coffee didn't. Yeah, there's still something going in your digestive tract. Like,
yeah, that's exactly right. Then, well, then I've lost all the benefits of it.
Yeah.
No, it's completely fine. But so again, if you don't understand principles, you would be like, well, my fast is broken, may as well get the cake.
Yeah. And I've had clients before who were on the what is it, the 8-16 diet or whatever.
Oh, 8-16, yeah.
And
16.
60, and so you only eat within an 8-hour window, and then you're doing the 16-hour fast. And I just said, if you want to stick to those times, that's fine. You don't have to, but if you find that works for you. And she come back with feedback just saying that she was getting to about 7 hours in. She was, to 15 hours of fasting. She was so hungry, felt awful, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, well, why don't you just change it? So you just increase that window by an hour, either shift it forward, shift it slightly, or just increase it. So it's it's a 9-hour window instead. as long as you're still just sticking to the same amount of food, just spread it out over an extra hour. We said, oh, would that not lose all the benefits? And then, I know that sounds funny once you understand the principles, but if you don't learn the principles and you just look at this rigid set thing, that you think there's this magic thing that when the clock hits 8 hours, suddenly you're fine. But then as soon as that, the next second goes, it's like, bam, it's all going to body fat. Like it just, if you think about it in terms of science, that's clearly not what happens, but you can get so restricted to these set rules.
I was playing around with like long-term fasts after, when I'm traveling. So if it was a long flight, I would just fast the whole flight, and then I'd try and fast the night as well. So it ended up being like 32, 36 hours just to see if it made any difference to jet lag or how I felt. And I did a post on it, and then I had a couple of questions like, we having tea, we having coffee, we having all these things. I was like, well, I had one coffee, like kind of couple hours in. They were like, oof, like, is that really a fast then? I'm like, well, I didn't really eat, and I don't know how many calories came into the coffee, so I called it a fast.
Yeah.
It's basically obsession of the minutia.
Yeah.
Go on, Alvin.
I was going to say, like, it's definitely a fast compared to what you were doing, right? Now, especially, us, we've always had like relatively high food intakes, like all the time. So, a fast I think it would also be very relative. And yeah, for someone to kick up a fuss about a coffee breaking your fast or not, like, come on, man, he's still gone like that long without eating. That's still classified as a pretty good fast,
That's the ultimate thing of the team culture. Like, no, if you want to be in the fasting thing, these are our rules. Like, say with the carnivore thing, you could eat a predominantly carnivore style diet, but add some rice to your evening meal or your post-workout meal or something like that. And as long as it kind of fits in with your calorie balance, energy balance, kind of stuff like that, there's not an issue with it. But that carnivore team are then going to be, you idiot, what have you done? You're not part of us. You had that rice. Whereas, like, it's living in those grey areas rather than having to be in these extremes the whole time, I think.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing my carnivore thing, and I was part of like some Facebook groups as well, like Aussie carnivores and stuff like that. And people would put up their recipes and stuff, and it would be like, oh my god, these people are like missing the forest for the trees or whatever. Like someone would have like their steak and then like with some grilled onions, and someone would go, hey, what are you doing? You're like, so, like, what are you doing there? Or then they'll start getting creative with they'll just start making super high calorie replacements for like carb type foods, like egg bread that's made of no flour or anything. It's just like a whole bunch of eggs that ends up double the calories as normal bread, And, like, you should see some of like how creative people get though, man. Like it was insane. But just to not have actual carbs, but to make it look like they have carbs with their meal,
But that's what I think is so crazy, because when you go to these really restricted groups, they then do try and replicate what they're restricting just within, like the amount of like fake meat for vegetarians. Some of it's like, it's called like, I don't know, fake chicken or whatever, in some of these restaurants. Then you can also go, people who are really against sugar or anything processed, suddenly they're making these avocado and whatever brownies and things, potentially double the calories if you just got, buy a chocolate bar. Instead, you've made this one out of like dates and nuts and everything, and suddenly it's like a 500 calorie bar that be good to send out to starving kids in Africa, right? Not as like a little snack at 10 a.m.
That's the crazy thing, is all these replacements, they look so healthy in their ingredients, but they're so much more calorific, and they don't even taste as good either.
Yeah. And that's why I think with protein bars, like the average protein bar is, I think, like 200, 250 calories. It's not that different to if you get like some just normal chocolate bars. The normal chocolate bar tastes better. And the 20 grams of protein that you get from that protein bar, most people, if they're eating like health conscious kind of diet, don't struggle to hit their protein goal. So it's not like you need that bar. And it's one of those of like, if not the potential, chocolate bars aren't going to make up the majority of your diet, but like, if you want to just have like that chocolate, just because it's the protein bar, it's probably still going to be similar calories. It's not actually giving you any benefit. It might just be mentally you feel like you're being, good because you're just having the protein bar. But yeah, it's just replacing it's just a replacement just to make you feel better rather than any physiological difference, really.
I mean, did you ever find your plate was quite bare when you just had a steak on it?
Yeah, but steak a big, a good thick steak can just be really good. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was never, but if it's thick, and because usually my meals would be large, but yeah, it would be definitely relatively low volume compared to what I eat now. But
do you ever just have like a whole chicken?
Yeah.
That sounds like something like
a whole Nando's chicken, stuff like that. Yeah, that was good. That was really good. So, yeah, it was an easy way of eating, to be honest. Didn't have to think much. Pretty expensive, but
yeah.
Yeah, the craziest thing I've done.
You cut out oats and rice and things like that and just replace it all with steak. It's going to be pricey.
I think the craziest thing I've done, it's not even from a fat loss perspective, it's trying to build muscle. It's when I did the GOMAD diet.
Oh,
a gallon of milk a day.
I tried that.
Gallon of milk a day, 20 rep squats. And I did that
diarrhea all day.
Yeah, I did that for about 2 to 3 months, and I put on about 5-6 kilos. And then I was like, I think my skin was breaking out left, right, center. And I was thinking, this is probably not a good thing. So I took it all out and I lost all the weight.
My gut was in pieces on that.
So your gut, yeah. And I haven't been able to drink milk since. I've not had a glass of milk since this. And this is when I was 18 years old. So I've not had a glass of milk. And now I've got a connection to milk in that if I drink milk, my knees are going to hurt, my gut's going to play up. And it's really crazy, like all from that period of time where I was just overdoing it. Like literally I was at school at this point, like the final year of school. Every break time, I'd go to the local newsagents, buy a liter of water, drink it, and come back. Yeah.
I had an association for a long time of thinking that just because you were pushing hard when you squatted, you just farted on like multiple reps. But it was just because I was just nailing so much milk throughout the day. And it was like, I can't remember the last time I farted during a set now, but like it was just like all the time.
It doesn't count if you don't fart.
Exactly.
And then during that diet, I was doing a whole milk, like a liter with each meal, and each meal was just loads of pasta and tuna. So it's just like I don't know what the calories were. It would be amazing to count them, but at 18 years old, I was probably having 6,000 calories a day that time, and I was only like 60 kilos. It's not like I was trying to really push the barriers or anything. Things we do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But again, that's the perfect example of like one of those fads you see online. You hear or read about someone who you respect or you admire being a proponent of it, and you think that must be the key. It's not just being consistent with eating in a slight surplus for a while. It's, oh no, I need to add that gallon of milk to my daily food. So that's what's going to make the difference.
Yeah, even sounded cool. It's the GOMAD diet.
Yeah. I think also the way they linked it to training, because it was like with heavy squat, like more like other squats, isn't it? So it's like, oh, that's really, they've thought about this. This obviously connects like milk for squats.
Milk, calcium.
Maybe it's like maybe it's hot chocolate for deadlifts. I don't know, but like
that's fun.
It's like the 20 rep squats thing. It was like when they said you got to do pullovers in between. You remember that?
Yeah.
Like if you do a widowmaker on the squat, you've got to then do pullovers to just open the rib cage.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the exact. It was something about when you do squats and then you do pullovers, the growth hormone effect of the squats will improve the size of your upper body by the pullovers because you open the rib cage up wider, so you have a bigger frame. That was the sell, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
I was doing these.
There was another movement. It was like a pullover, but if you hold on to like the rack and almost do like an isometric pullover, like pulling it down.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, and like, I must have stood in the gym and people must have been like, what the hell is he doing? I'm just like pulling down on this rack, still gassed off squats.
Yeah. You get jacked though doing that when you think about it. If you're doing widowmakers and pullovers, like you're going to get good legs, good lats. Not because of the growth hormone, just because you're training hard and eating more food,
Yeah, we should do a training one soon. On all the training one, I can go on for days about all the stuff I've tried.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a fun
I
one.
remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, back when I remember the Milos Shashev's giant set protocols. Remember them?
Yeah. You literally
Someone
can't do
really
them
did
at a
tell me
commercial gym.
that wasn't the best financials, Yeah.
No.
So I remember doing that for like a good 6 to 8 months, just giant sets of everything, and being low carb, literally just like my carbs were, I don't know, 50 grams of sweet potato. So like not even 50 grams of carbs, 50 grams of sweet potato was my only carb source. Doing giant sets as a natural.
Yeah.
Damn. I wish I had videos of just how that looked.
One chemical
I just
you missed out
wanted
there.
I would like to see what I was doing. Hey?
One chemical you missed out on.
Yeah. Many chemicals I missed out on with that. Like that's far out. But yeah, this is what we were taught, right? This is it was a very Policanesque gym that we were going to, and at the time that was a bit of a thing. Remember how we had that little connection with him for a while? I think BPAC also brought it in for a while.
Yeah. No, I think the training ones are going to be good. I think.
On that note, for this one, let's call it a wrap. Environment dictates your future success, so get it right and make it happen.